Don't get into a competition with your ex. Whatever your relationship is with your dad, I want you to have a happy, healthy one. And so I'm not going to do a tit for tat. I'm not going to do a back or forth. This is where I am. This is what I'm standing on. And this is where we can have a relationship. It may not look like the one that you're having with them. Focus on long term. Realize that what's happening right now, especially if the divorce just got announced, if you're in the middle of it, if it just happened, realize that I don't like to say time heals all wounds. Time gives people time to make adjustment if they want to.
This is the Joy Act, where finding joy beyond divorce begins with your understanding that the depth of your heartache shows the depth of your capacity for joy. I'm Dr. Lisa Summerour, and together we'll use accountability, alignment, communication, and trust to transform your journey. It's time to step into the Joy Act.
Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Dr. Lisa, your accredited breakup and divorce coach, and this is the Joy Act. This is a place where you can come to find out that you can create joy in your life after going through a divorce, a difficult divorce, any kind of divorce. There is joy on the other side of it if you do the work to make that happen. I'm starting to realize I'm also a leadership coach, and one of the things that struck me this week working with a client was that this is the premier way for you to become the leader in your life. So going through this process of getting to, I like to call it the joy act of life, going through the process of finding out what that looks like for you is you taking full leadership accountability of your entire life. We know that divorce reshapes family dynamics, especially with adult children. So there are two key challenges that I'm going to be talking about today. One is encouraging your adult children or child to have their own relationship with both parents. And this can be challenging because very likely they only know you as a unit, right? They only know you as a unit. And so now you're asking them to look at you as two completely different individuals, two separate individuals. And you may be, both of you actually may be changing as a result of the divorce. So it's not just now looking at you as two separate individuals, but you're not even the same individual as they remember when they were living in your home. So that's one thing. Encouraging your adult child to form their own relationship. The other one is a little more emotionally challenging, and that is, how do you handle when your adult child has picked sides in the divorce? So before we get started, I want to share something with you that is here to help you if you are on this divorce journey or you've just gone through one and you're still processing. We know that, like I said, divorce reshapes relationships, and it's not just the relationship with your ex. Yeah, it's the relationship with your children. Could be other family members, it could be friends. It just reshapes the dynamics of so many relationships in your life. I want you to know that you don't have to go through all of these things by yourself. There actually is help. There is support out here for you. And it's one of the reasons that I created my masterclass. It's 4 essential steps to creating joy after a difficult divorce. And in this masterclass, I explore how you can rebuild your confidence and overcome the heartache, regain your sense of self, and move forward without the resentment. So you can sign up at www.dr-lisa.joy beyond divorce. Now, let's go ahead and get into today's conversation. So encouraging your child to build their own relationships with you and the other parent. The reason this is important is because the divorce happened between you and your ex. It did not happen with the children. And I have to keep reminding both of us that I'm talking about adult children. I'm not talking about young children. Now, having said that, I do want to say this. Like I said earlier, divorce reshapes the dynamics of a lot of the relationships, not just the two people who got divorced. So to some degree, it does happen between more than just the two parents. There is a point, as far as I'm concerned, where I think it's okay for a parent to say to their adult child, you're overstepping your boundaries here. Like, this really ain't about you. Might be something that you need to say or figure out a way to say it that feels comfortable for you, but that could be the case. Having said that, I do want to share this. When you go through a divorce and you have adult children, I want you to think about what your family traditions were in terms of holidays, birthdays, vacations. Were you still traveling together as a family with your adult children? And I say that because my family, we do vacations together. It could be a whole group of us. If you were doing that with your children, and now you and your partner, your spouse, are now separated or divorced, that just changed the dynamics of what vacationing is going to look like for your entire family or for that group of family and friends who were used to traveling with you. So your child, adult as they may be, now has to figure out what's vacation going to look like. Same thing happens for if they have children. What are birthdays for their kids going to be like? What are the holidays going to be like? They now have to figure out what Christmas or Thanksgiving, whatever holidays exist that you celebrate, your adult children's lives are going to be adjusted by that. So I just ask that while the divorce was between the two of you and you didn't divorce your children, understand that there's still some emotional things and some actual legit things that have to be worked out now. And so those are conversations that I think need to have. Understand that your adult children may need space and the freedom to develop those connections. In other words, you may find that they're not as available to you right now because they now have to split the time that they used to spend with the two of you together. They now have to split that, and they have to navigate and coordinate how they're going to get to know the two of you as individuals. And so they may not be available all the time. They may not be readily available. But you do want to encourage them that building these individual relationships, instead of them looking at this as a loss, like they haven't lost their parent, they now can still look at this as a gift opportunity of getting to know each one of their parents as different individuals, as adults. One of my sisters and I have had this conversation, just getting older and being able to look at your parents, and in this case our mom, as an adult who grew up and had teenage years just like we did and did stupid crap just like we did and had relationships that didn't last, that were good, that were short term, that were all of the things that we can look back over our lives and say, oh yeah, we experienced that. We now have to remind ourselves, so did our mom, so did everybody's parent, and they've gotten to this place in their lives the same way we hope to, with all of these things coming along behind you, creating the path of your past, the path of your history. And you start realizing there's no magic answer for this life. There's no magic way to get through this life. And you have to look at your parents as two individuals who are doing the best they can with what they have and what they know in the moment. Show them some grace. If you're watching this and you're one of those adult children, show your parents some grace. If you're watching this and you are that adult who just got divorced, that parent who just got divorced, it's okay to have this kind of conversation with your adult children. Say, look, this is no different than when you were 10, 15, 16, 17. I don't have a manual for this. I am doing the best I can with my life the same way I expect you to do with yours. And I'm sorry if this is not what you thought should be happening in my life, but I didn't put this out for a vote. I know, I'm trying to be really nice about this, but sometimes these topics are just like, look, I would say this to adult children of divorced parents. You only know what you think you know about their relationship because you weren't there at the beginning of it. You only know what you think you know. So to think that you're supposed to know what your parent should be doing right now, or you're trying to tell them that they're not working at their marriage hard enough, they should have tried harder, all of those things, just don't do that. Don't do that. That was for the adult children. Some of the common mistakes that parents do make, and you want to avoid these if you can, don't speak negatively about the other parent. Now, this is huge when you're dealing with children and the parents are going through a divorce, because the seeds that you plant in a child's head, it could be you're going to put them in therapy having to deal with that. If you have adult children, and depending on why the divorce is happening, if that's something that you're going to share with them, you really still don't want to spend time speaking negatively about their parent, especially when you are encouraging them to get to know them on their own terms. Yeah, they could have been a horrible spouse to you. They could have been a terrible partner to you. They could have done things that are the reason the marriage is falling apart or dissolving or is over. All of that can be true, and they still could be a decent human being and a good parent and a role model to your child. I'm back to the both and instead of the either or. It's possible. Just like a really good, amazing parent who's just been the model of good parenting can still do some stupid stuff that ends up hurting their kid and sends their kid into therapy at some point, because it doesn't mean you're fabulous and perfect all the time. You're not operating at a level of excellence all the time. What we're all doing is trying to do the best we can in the moment. And we may knock it out the park today and tomorrow slip and fall and just mess up a whole bunch of stuff. And you want to have grace for yourself and other people, and you want to teach grace. Second thing is, don't expect or encourage or try to manipulate your adult children into taking a stand. And this one might be the most difficult one for some people, because if your marriage ended because of infidelity or something that for you just goes so against your values, like you say, I would never have done this to you, that kind of thing, it is going to be difficult, because you've probably already gone to a couple of friends, some close family members, and told them how horrible they were and what they did and why you're not putting up with it anymore. All of that has happened. If your adult child did not witness it firsthand, I'm not going to say you shouldn't share it with them. You just have to figure out a way to share it so that it's your perspective on what happened. And I would say you can go and talk to your mom, dad, whoever the other parent is, and let them share their side of what happened. This is how I experienced it. And don't give them that information expecting them to take a stand. The other side of that is avoid overcompensating for the other parent's flaws. In other words, don't make excuses for them because you think it's your job to make it not look as bad as it was, or make it look less painful than it was for the sake of your adult child. This is why it's so important that you encourage them to develop a relationship with the other parent, because this is what I do believe, and I believe this from young children on up. I believe when we give people an opportunity to spend that time with the other parent, they will figure out on their own who this person is. They need to figure that out for themselves. And I can use myself as an example. Even though I was a child when my mother said this to me, she repeated it when I became an adult, because I literally had an opportunity to spend time and live with my biological dad, who had not raised me. But she always told us, she never talked bad about him. And the reason she said is because you had the right to grow up and develop your own relationship with your father. And that gave everybody a chance to mature. Because she'd be the first to tell you, she said, we were two ignorant teenagers when you were born. They were two kids in high school, graduating with two daughters and married. When my mother graduated high school, she had two children and a husband when she got her diploma. That's a lot. And I commend her for going all those years, dealing with the things that the two of them dealt with, and then coming out of it and making a decision not to badmouth him in front of us. So I literally, when we got to spend time with him or talk to him, it was always, my conversation with him or our time together. When I was able to move in with him and live with him for a little while, I was able to see who he was. And her point was, give people a chance to grow and change, and you decide who they are when you get to spend time with them. So give that gift to your adult children. And you can be fair with them and say, this was my experience. I'm not asking you to pick sides. I don't need you to defend me or protect me. And I'll talk about why that's important later, because it could happen anyway. And so you might feel like you're walking that fine line between, I want to be honest, I don't want to badmouth them, but I also don't want to sugarcoat this either. Because that other thing is overcompensating for the parent's flaws. So one of the ways you can encourage your adult child to be independent in terms of relating to you, having these new relationships with you and their parent, is that emotional maturity. The ability to say, this was my experience with your father or mother, whoever the other parent is. This was my experience. This is what was challenging for me. This is what I needed to do for myself. These are the qualities about them that I fell in love with. These are the things that were happening that went against my values to the point where I know this is the best decision for me. And if they want to get into what happened and it's too much, you can give them some of the information. I want to give you another example here because I was actually in therapy with an ex who had a child. And at some point during one of our sessions, he said to our therapist, well, there are things that I don't want to tell my child because I don't want to say anything negative about their mom. I don't want them to think badly about their mom. And the therapist said, that's a choice you're making. And I thought, oh, wow. Now, the therapist wasn't saying, give your kid all this negative information about their mother. What the therapist, I believe, was saying is you are making a decision because you could sit down and have a level-headed conversation that's not full of emotion or a bunch of negativity and say to your child, look, I know I did some things wrong in our marriage and it is not your fault that we are not together. And 3, some of the things that your mom did that just bothered me, that went against my values, that made it difficult for me to be there, were this, this, and this. I'm not going to go into all the details because I don't think it's important. And this may be important if the scenario is that you were the bad guy and that's all you're getting. I think you do have a right to defend yourself to some degree, or at least speak your truth, as they would say, speak your mind, speak your truth. And then I think you have to let that go and tell them, look, this is not a conversation that I feel like I need to continue to have. I wanted to be able to speak to you as an adult and let you know that there are always 2 sides to every story. And you may have picked up on some things or realized some things that even I'm not aware of. And that's fine. But your relationship with me is no longer dependent on your relationship with your other parent. The other thing you want to do to encourage their independence is respect their boundaries. So respect the fact that if you're encouraging this independent relationship with the other parent and they do it, it's not about you making them feel guilty because they tell you, what, we're spending Christmas with dad. Because they can't be at 2 places at once. And you just have a reasonable adult conversation. Say, look, well, I'd love to see you for one of the holidays. Can we figure out which one we can spend together? And that way you're not, and if you want to make it a win-lose situation, that's going to be another thing that you create for yourself. That's just going to be another barrier you guys have to overcome by saying, oh, how did you decide to spend Christmas with your dad instead of with me? So avoid that. Respect their boundaries and respect the decisions, and then have an adult conversation with your adult children about how you're feeling, what it is that you would like to see happen, and how can we figure out an arrangement. What's the arrangement going to be? And is it going to alternate? Have the conversation the same way you would have needed to have this conversation if you were getting a divorce, your children were young. You would have to have this conversation with your ex to figure out where the kids going to be for the holidays. Now you're having that same conversation with your adult children as to where are they going to be for the holidays. Are they coming to you? Or are you going to go to them? And you may tell them, oh, well, that's great because I'm going to the islands for the holidays, so I wasn't going to be here anyway. So you guys have a ball, take pictures, send me some. Figure out what all your options might look like. It's a different world now. It's going to be a different world. Another thing you can do to encourage their independence, give advice when you're asked, and don't try to control their choices. And that's basically what I just covered with you. Don't try to control their choices. If they tell you, look, I'm going to be with dad for the holidays, or I'm taking the kids and our family is going to go spend the weekend with him we're going fishing, or whatever it is, your response, be mindful, your response should not be some sarcastic remark or some response that's given to elicit guilt or discomfort in your adult child. and possibly your grandchildren. Let you figure out what you need to do. Bite your tongue, wish them well. Your responsibility is to figure out, what is my time with them going to look like? Not how much time are they spending with my ex. Let's not do that. So let's talk about this scenario. This is a difficult one. This is really uncomfortable. What happens when your adult children actually do pick sides? They're kind of absorbing the emotional energy of the divorce to some degree when that happens. Now, every situation is different, and it is possible that your adult children have been experiencing the toxicity or the abuse. They've been seeing it. Maybe they've experienced it. Whatever the dysfunction is that caused all this discord, maybe they're aware of some of it and maybe they aren't. And that's going to make a difference, because if they have been aware of it and they pick sides, it's very likely that they pick the side of the parent who they believe. Now, this could be they feel like they need to protect one parent. So sometimes they will side with the, I'm going to air quote, weaker parent. So that might be the one who has been getting abused. It might be the one who has been getting abused. It could be the one who didn't initiate the divorce, which is interesting, because the parent who was being abused might have initiated the divorce. And if the other parent used that to manipulate the child, even though they're an adult, the adult child may be siding with the parent that they feel like has been victimized and hurt by the divorce. They're not thinking about anything that happened to cause the divorce. And so all of these things could be getting factored in to why and how an adult child would end up picking sides. And then I haven't even gotten into outside influences, which could be a new spouse, because sometimes this stuff happens later. Like the example I gave earlier is all coming up because one of the people is now getting remarried, and all of a sudden all this stuff is coming up. Could be in-laws, it could be friends. The fact is, you don't know. If you want to find out, it's okay to want to have that conversation. And it might be something like, look, I am feeling like I'm going through a divorce with your father. I'm going to say father, and I'm going to assume this is a woman because it's getting too confusing trying to keep this general. And most of the people that I end up working with are women. So that's why I'm going to have the conversation this way. So if you're talking to your adult child, you can simply say to them, look, I'm getting a divorce from your dad, but I feel like something is coming between the two of us during this process. Or your father and I got divorced, and I feel like somehow that's put distance between us. Can we have a conversation about this? And you have to position yourself to be able to hear and listen to what they're going to say without interrupting them, and as much as you possibly can without blowing your top. You want to keep your emotions in check so you can really hear what's going on for them and realize that this is not about winning them back. So you want to be able to stay calm, because if you get emotional, it's just going to push them further away, right? And maybe add credibility to whatever they're hearing from your ex. Keep the door open for communication, because if they picked sides and it's not yours, you're probably not going to change their mind in one conversation anyway. And sometimes the more it seems like you are defending yourself, the more the person looks at you like you did something wrong. Like, well, if you didn't have anything to defend, you wouldn't put all this energy into it. Right? At the end of the day, it's just hard to change somebody's mind once it's set. Don't compete with the other parent. Don't get into a competition with your ex. Whatever your relationship is with your dad, I want you to have a happy, healthy one. And so I'm not going to do a tit for tat. I'm not going to do a back or forth. This is where I am. This is what I'm standing on. And this is where we can have a relationship. It may not look like the one that you're having with them. Focus on long term. Realize that what's happening right now, especially if the divorce just got announced, if you're in the middle of it, if it just happened, realize that I don't like to say time heals all wounds. Time gives people time to make adjustments if they want to. And you leave the door open. It also means you can continue to reach out. If it has gotten to the point where your adult child doesn't really communicate with you anymore and you're trying to figure out, should I keep sending cards? Should I keep calling? If you can do that without the emotional attachment, like you're doing it because you love them and you want to have a relationship. So yeah, there is some emotional attachment. When I say without the emotional attachment that causes you to be angry, bitter, resentful, or have your expectations run amok. Understand that you're doing it to keep the door open. You're doing it to let them know, had a great vacation, thought about you when this happened. Send the note, send the card, send the text, and be done with it. And no, I don't know if I'm going to hear from them or not, but I'm at a point now where I do these messages for myself because it's what I want to do to let them know that I'm still here, that I still think about them, I still care, I still love them. And when you can do that, you're going to feel good about it. If you do it and then you sit there and wait for the text response, or you get mad because they're not calling you back, or you don't get any notifications about, or you're hearing from other people what's going on with them, you're going to need to get yourself to a place where if you want to maintain communication like that or contact in that way, you have a reason for doing it that has nothing to do with their response. I had a girlfriend that used to tell me, your problem is your expectations of them are too high. And in that scenario where you already know they have picked sides and there's nothing you can do about it and your communication is either cut off or it's minimal, you're going to have to figure out what's going to work for you that you can be okay continuing to do. Because it's not about winning them back. It's about creating a healthy relationship that is built on respect and trust. So I talked a little bit about the dysfunctional or toxic or abusive relationships. If you're seeing your child maintain a relationship with your ex and your ex was clearly abusive, whether it was emotional or physical, however the abuse showed up, and that was the main reason that this marriage has not worked, that can almost feel like another form of abuse for you as a parent. I 100% can see why that would be. And I have seen it in people that are close to me where their parents were in an abusive marriage. And when it ended, one of the parents was like, I can't believe you're still staying in touch with them. And I remember having this conversation with the adult child saying, they got married and I am a product of that marriage. That wasn't my experience there. And I don't want to punish my one parent because the other one is mad at him because of what they lived with for all those years. And the perspective doesn't have to be one that you agree with. You may have a real problem with it, and you're dealing with another adult who gets to make up their mind about how they handle their independent relationship with their parent, your ex. Because at the end of the day, they may not see the abuse the way you saw the abuse, or they saw it and they're able to forgive because they're looking at it going, okay, but you're safe now, you're out of it now, and I would like to move this on. And maybe if the adult children have children, that means you're asking them to sever the relationship with their children and the other grandparent, and they're not willing to lose that. So it can be a really challenging scenario. It happens more often, I think, than some people realize if this is not part of your family dynamics. And it is one of those things that can be really difficult to deal with. And as the adult parent dealing with an adult child, you have to give them the freedom and the autonomy to make the best decisions for them. And leave room that other parent is not the person they were when you were with them. No matter how horrible it was when you were together. When your child is dealing with them, your adult child and the grandchildren are dealing with them, this person may just be sunshine. And people can mature and grow and change as they get older. And so sometimes you have to figure out, how long will I harbor this resentment and this anger, and what is it doing to me if I'm still emotionally in a place, in a relationship that existed years ago, and I haven't let go, haven't forgotten, haven't forgiven. And I'm not even one of those people that says you got to forgive. Do what you need to do so that you can live with yourself. Whatever that looks like. For some people, that's forgiving. I have had world-renowned psychologists say, oh, I'll never forgive this person for what they did because it still hurts me to think about it now. But they've moved on with their life and they're doing fine. So it's all relative. It really is about what is going to work for you. So in this instant, Your child may not see it and they may minimize it, and that may drive you completely insane almost, and you're going to have to figure out how to deal with that, because that is your child, your adult child's perspective. That's what they believe. Those are the decisions that they have chosen to make based on what they believe, and you don't get to manipulate or change that. Emotional entanglement. Sometimes children, even as adults, they've been conditioned to keep the peace. And so, in an effort to keep the peace, even if they think that other parent really was horrible, really did do some horrible things, isn't really comfortable being around them now, wasn't comfortable being around them then, they may do it just to keep the peace. Well, why are you still going over there? Well, I just feel bad because they're asking, and I just want everybody to be happy. Now, that may drive you completely crazy as well. It may make you nauseous. You may want to just grab your kid and put them in a chokehold or shake their shoulders to try to shake some sense back into them. And you can't. And you're just going to have to acknowledge that this is where your child is, this is who they are, and this is what they've chosen to do. Could you suggest therapy? Yeah, maybe. Because maybe they do need to work through that. At the end of the day, your main concern is your relationship with your adult child. Your relationship with your adult child, you should be asking yourself, have you stepped outside of your lane? Unless it's like, hey, did you have a great time the weekend with your dad? You guys have fun? Unless it's something like that, that's really none of your business. And you're probably going to be better off not taking yourself down that path if you already know that emotionally it's going to take you someplace you don't want to go. So if this is your reality, the fact that your child has picked sides and there was abuse involved, get rid of this expectation that your child is going to validate your experience. So you telling them over and over again how horrible things were, all the bad things that your ex did, all of that, you really need to find a therapist, get a coach, do something, do some self-work, and just stop doing that, because all that's going to do is probably create more tension between you and your child. Your expectation that they are ever going to figure this out and validate your experience, it's not going to happen right now. And maybe down the road it will, and maybe it won't. Set firm boundaries around the conversations that you will have with them. And so you are perfectly within your rights to say, you know what? I don't want to have conversations with you about your dad. We can spend time together, do all of these things, but that's not a conversation I want to have, especially if what could be difficult, if you know this person to be somebody who just really made your life miserable, and all your adult child is telling you is how wonderful they are and how thoughtful and considerate and all the kind, and you're like, who are they talking about? Who are you talking about? That cannot be the person I spent 25, 30 years with. So it's fine for you to set that boundary and go, you know what? I'm glad that you're developing a relationship with them. That's on you. Can we spend our time together talking about things that are related to the two of us? And then don't try to prove the abuse, okay? What happened to you happened to you. What you believe is what you believe, and what you know is what you know. You don't have to convince them. You don't need them to buy into it for it to have been true for you. And so save your energy, avoid that tension by not positioning yourself to feel like you got to prove to them. So even if they say to you, well, I never saw it, so how do I know it happened? That's when you need to have the emotional maturity to go, you know what? This is what I'm not going to do. Because one of the things that happens, and especially to women, is we get positioned to second guess ourselves. It's almost like you're getting gaslighted, that you got to prove what you already lived through really happened so they can say, oh, I believe you. No, you believe you. Let that be enough, and let this be in that category of conversations that we just don't have moving forward. Prioritize your own healing. Yes. Prioritize your own healing. Don't seek the approval of your adult child. So all of this is connected. You don't have to convince them that it happened. You don't have to prove to them that there was abuse involved. You can have a conversation and let them know, this is what I was experiencing. This is how it made me feel. This is why I knew it was time to leave. I don't need you to believe this, but I wanted to tell you, and this is the only conversation I'm going to have with you about it. final thoughts on this is, if your child does maintain contact with somebody who was abusing you, protect your peace. Figure out what that looks like and protect your peace. It's a sensitive space to be in, and it's a very real space for a lot of people who end up in this space who don't know how to deal with these adult children who are coming at them with all this emotional baggage themselves, while you're trying to deal with this relationship you just got out of, or this marriage that you just ended. So at the end of the day, protect your peace. That's your job. Now, I know this conversation today, it may have brought up a lot of different emotions. Hopefully it's given you some information that's going to help you. If you've been in this experience, if you've had this experience dealing with your adult children, share how it worked out for you. What are some of the things that worked for you? If you had an adult child and you're okay sharing that did pick sides, has it been resolved? If so, how? Or how are you dealing with it and coping with it if it wasn't? And if you are an adult child and your parents have gotten divorced, or you just found out they're going through one, I hope this has helped you think about some things. Look at your parents as two grown folks who did the best they could with what they had, and don't insert yourself in their divorce process. Be there as a support for them, right? Be there as a support and get to know them individually. Don't look at this as a loss for them. Look at this as you still having the gift of two parents that you get to spend time with. So the emotions for this, whether it's frustration or sadness, or maybe you're feeling a little bit of relief because if somebody's doing this podcast, you're probably not alone. But if you are looking for more ways to learn how to reclaim your peace, I do want to invite you to take my masterclass, 4 Essential Steps to Creating Joy After a Difficult Divorce. And, hold on a minute, and get a copy of my book. You can go to Barnes & Nobles. You can go to Amazon, get a copy of my book, Divorce is Not a Destination. Divorce is not a destination. This is a book and a workbook in one. So you have everything in here. It's going to give you some exercises, but it will give you some tools and tips so that you can start learning to rebuild your confidence. You can learn to overcome the heartache. And more importantly, you can learn to live a life of joy. You can step into what I like to call the joy act of life. I will see you here next week.